Morning, guys. This is session 3, reading and exploration. The text that we are reading is called The Paradise Carpet by Jamelia Gavin. This is a quick recap. Can you remember what the word slave meant? Perhaps you could make a word web if you are uncertain. We're doing a daily review task, mixing it up a little bit. So list 3 things that you can remember about the child labour and the carpet industry. Pause the slide and have a go. And we're adding to our vocabulary builder. The word is exploit, which means the definition is a verb. It's make use of in a way considered unfair or underhand. Example, the company was exploiting a legal loophole. I think the icon is self-explanatory, and you have a task. Which of these is an example of correct use of the verb exploited? Masters of chimney sweeps exploited the children of poor families, forcing them to work in dangerous situations, or conditions rather. Or B, he exploited his friend when he helped him to move the heavy boxes. A recap. This is the section of text that you read last lesson. This lesson, we're going to be looking at how does the writer describe the conditions, the working conditions of the boys. So we're going to do some active reading here, and while we're reading and highlighting, the best thing that you can do if you've got the text printed is that you highlight. If you don't have the text printed, I would be writing down the evidence that you find as you go along. So as I read the text, I'm thinking, does this show that the boys have negative or positive working conditions? What are the key pieces that let me know something that answers that question? So I'm going to go through now. 1 not blue, 2 not yellow, 3 not red, 4 not green. At this point, that doesn't really tell me anything about the working conditions of the boys, I feel, so I'm going to carry on. The young boys chanted the pattern of the carpet they were weaving. Bony little fingers deftly drew the carpet down the thread, warp and weft, top to bottom, right to left, warp and weft, and knot. Now, when I'm looking, there are some extra clues here. What evidence are there that the boys have to work hard? I'm going to highlight warp and weft, and I'm going to look at that example and how that shows that they are having to work hard. And then I'm going to move from what to how. What techniques does she use? What significant word choices has she made? And then I'm going to move on to why. I've chose warp and weft because I felt that's one that perhaps you'd be less certain of the meaning of it. And I've left ones that I feel are easier perhaps or more straightforward for you to unpick. So I'm going to read the rest of the text, and then I'm going to explore that example, and then I'm going to let you find and explore an example that shows in some way the conditions of the boys, the working conditions of the boys. So behind the loom, inside a dark mud hut, crouching like caged animals, sat a line of boys. With back against the wall, their thin arms rose and fell as they drew the thread from top to bottom, right to left, warp and weft and knot. They could have been musicians plucking at strings, but these were carpet weavers, whose harmonies were the eyes, not the ears, as bit by bit the glorious patterns and hues of a rich carpet emerged in the darkness. 1 not blue, 2 not yellow, 3 not red, 4 not green. The boys wove their thread, prompted and guided by the old Rama, the only man among them who had the pattern pinned to an upright in front of him. Okay, so I'm then going to do my turn. So I'm going to look at what does the writer tell us? Well, the writer conveys the idea that the boys will work very hard. Okay, and how do I know that? So now I'm going to provide an example. How? The repetition of warp and weft describe the continued actions of the boys, conveying that they work long hours and the work is repetitive. Furthermore, the use of the verb chanted suggests, do you know? Can you have a think about that now? I believe that use of the word chanted in some way reflects their almost imprisonment, their exploitation, the idea that they are together as a group, collectively chanting to someone else's beat. Why? What bigger point does she want to make? Well, Gavin does this to create a sense of sympathy for the boys who work long hours despite only being children. Your turn now. In your notes, you need to answer the questions. How does the writer describe the working condition of the boys? You will need to cover in your answer how, what, why. So now you need to reread that section and jot down anything that you think that shows that the working conditions of the boys are negative or that they have to work hard. If I was looking, I'd be looking, first of all, some bits that show their conditions are poor, such as bony little fingers, the idea that it's a dark mud hut, that they're crouching like caged animals sat in a line. There are plenty of clues throughout here that shows the boys are working in poor conditions, highlighting to us the unfairness, okay? You now have to do your what, how, why paragraph. So what, how does the writer tells us? So you can use the same sentence if you want. The writer describes the terrible working condition of the boys, but then you must follow on with how. What techniques does she use? What significant word choices has she made? So provide your example and unpick it, and then finish with why. What bigger point does she want to make? If you are stuck, I have provided an example that you can run through. So the writer describes the terrible working condition of the boys. How? She describes that the boys are crouching like caged animals. This simile suggests that. And then why? The writer wants us to. If you're struggling to think why crouching like caged animals, what does the word caged make us think of? Why is that significant? Why call them animals instead of boys? Why are they crouching? What does that suggest about the conditions that they are working in? If you have worked for under 30 minutes, choose another line or lines that you think are effective in creating sympathy for the boys and complete a what, how, why analysis of your chosen line. Answers. This one's quite easy for today. The answer was A, because the chimney sweeps exploit the children of poor families, forcing them to work in dangerous conditions. This, the relevance of the carpet workers shows that this idea that, you know, children being exploited was a thing of a past is not true. There are still children being exploited, and I think it's important that we do read texts that make us consider our privileged position. Right, hope you have a good day. See you tomorrow.